Oh my goodness, look at everybody. Hello. So everyone's currently on mute. You can unmute yourselves and put your cameras on, I think, if you would like to. Hello, Katie. Hello, Jane.
Hello.
Hello. It's Felicity. I'll just let you know we're recording, so don't say anything rude.
Yet, anyway.
Yeah, exactly. We've got 23. Hi, Irene. How are you?
Warm is how I am, Diane.
No, it's practically Arctic where I am. It's so cold.
I know, but you know what? We make the best of it and we still grumble. Hello, everybody. Evening all.
Evening
I am
all.
not Nigel, I'm Irene.
Commonly known as Nigel.
Well, yes.
If people are on
Evening.
and they want their cameras on, they can switch them on, I believe, and their microphones they can switch on as well. So feel free. We've got Tiggy joining. Right. We've got that person. That's Sue from Wyfold.
I can just tell you that here in Derbyshire, it's a very balmy 27.
Oh, we've got like
Freezing.
32, 33 today. Yeah.
Yeah, same here. And a thunderstorm going on in Swindon, apparently.
Oh, nice. That's probably welcome, I imagine. Hello, Francis. I can't actually see you anymore, Francis. I don't know where you are.
Have I got my camera on? Oh, no, I have got my camera on.
So we're expecting about 46 people. We're on 24 at the moment.
Diane, is this going to be recorded?
It's recording at the moment, Irene, so don't say anything rude.
No swearing.
I've never been known to say that anything rude anyway, so you're safe.
I don't believe you.
Why have I got stars behind me?
Why have you got what?
Well, I'm in the corner and I've got a sort of...
You have a background on, Francis.
Nobody puts Francis in the corner. Look at you, it's like Star Trek.
It's a great shooting star, though, Francis. It's excellent.
I don't know how that happened. How do I turn it off, somebody? Katie, help.
It should be in your background settings, which on Teams are, I think, that. Oh yeah, you know where it says we turn your camera off? There's a little arrow next to it. It's on that.
Is there?
Yeah. Oh look, that could be stars as well.
Oh, there we go. Background effects.
There you
Francis,
go.
it's very fetching.
Is it? Shall I leave it on?
Oh, now your camera's off.
Oh. Well, let me just see what I can do. I could blur myself. That might be better. What's that done?
Your camera is still off. Maybe you've turned your camera off and you've done the background. You have to turn your camera back on.
Is that better?
There you go. There we go.
Right, so I've got people messaging me saying they can't get on, but I'm just emailing. Okay, who have we got here?
Well, this is quite fun. I've never been on a Teams training session before, but I've...
Oh, you do it all with RDA, Roly. Come on. Okay.
Roly, it could be a whole new world for you now. We do it all the time.
Who else have I got? Hello, Tiggy. Hello, Anthea.
Hi.
Janine. Moo. Hi. Oh my goodness. Got Elizabeth joining. Hello, Elizabeth. You can switch your camera on. We can all wave at you. Wyfold yard manager. Let's give her a cheer when she switches her camera on.
Diane, I do know that Viv Bryan is stuck on a train out of Euston because it sounds a bit warm. So she will join when she can.
Okay, I'm just going to give it one more minute. When it's 18:03, we're going to get going. Okay.
I think it's working.
Oh, we've got more. Oh, Jane, have a look. Here we go.
I've come home from the beach for this.
Have you?
Yeah, I've been at the beach all day.
Katie. I'm impressed.
Katie, you should have stayed there.
You better be interested.
I'm dedicated.
You better make it worthwhile. Hi, Jane. If
Katie,
you switch on
one sensible girl, Katie. One sensible girl, Katie.
Oh.
Jane, if you switch on, Jane, have a look. You can switch on your camera and your mic. We'll be able to hear you. That goes the same. And Karen, everybody who's hasn't got their video switched on. You don't have to switch it on, but if you want to, you can, and you can switch your mic on.
Well, I didn't know how to turn mine off.
Is that on now?
Yes, that's on. We can hear you, Jane.
Oh, thank you.
Hello, Sue Bird. Hello. Brilliant. Okay, we are going to get going. So well done, everybody, for making it onto the call on this incredibly hot day and during half term as well. Thank you for being here. If those of you who were at the conference will remember that poor Roly couldn't make it. He had some personal crises that he had to deal with it, but he's very kindly agreed to give us some time this evening. The original time schedule for the session was 20 minutes presentation and 10 minutes for Q&A. If that's all it takes, that's great. I have booked this call for an hour, so if we need any longer, we can do. The session is being recorded. I hope everybody's okay with that. Is anybody not okay with it? Shout now. Not sure what I'll do about it other than delete you, but anyway, but hopefully everyone's all right with being recorded, so people can have access to it once it's finished. Huge thanks that she's not on the call at the moment, but Amy Nichol at National Office. Without her, we would not be here because my tech skills are absolutely shocking, but at least we've got going. I think it's probably better if we let Roly do his thing, and then we can ask, if you make a note of any questions you've got or any discussion points you want to raise at the end, we can do that. So for now, I'm going to actually mute everybody unless anybody's got any questions at this stage. I will mute everybody then, and over to Roly.
Thank you very.
But Roly, I've muted you.
No, I'm back on. Yeah. I'm back on. Good. Can everyone see the slides? You can see those, Diane, can you? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Brilliant. Good. So thank you very much. As Diane mentioned, I was very sorry not to join you last month, and thank you for coming this evening on apparently the hottest day ever in May, and at least in some parts of the country, and during half term. And the subject, the title I was given then, and I think I've tweaked it slightly: social license and equine welfare. And obviously, social license is a term that is used a lot now, not maybe always in the most constructive way, but I thought obviously for today really wanted to focus on what the relevance is to the RDA and the brilliant work that you do in terms of strengths, the vulnerabilities and the challenges it brings, but most importantly, and if you know me, you know that I'm an eternal optimist, and but without a doubt I think there is real opportunities when in this whole sphere about the future sustainability for equestrianism. So then, just in terms of how we're going to structure it, I just thought we could a very brief introduction to World Horse Welfare, the organisation that I have been involved with for the last 18 years. Just by a very quick background, I'm a vet by training, and have always been in the veterinary sphere. Obviously, not a clinical vet now, but have the great joy and luck to be involved with World Horse Welfare. Then we'll just focus in on social licence and what that means. Try to reflect that then in the most important relevant section. So what does social licence mean to the RDA and the equine assisted services sector more broadly? And then just to bring that together. And as Diane says, I'm going to speak for about 20 to 25 minutes. If anyone's got any burning questions on the way through, then by all means, please do chip in. If not, we'll leave questions to the end, and then we can have a good discussion. So many of you, I'm sure, might know World Horse Welfare, but just by way of a very brief introduction, we're an organisation that's almost 100 years old. And during that time, we've strived to inspire people to put the horse at the centre of how we think, care, act, ride and regulate. And one thing that's pretty unique, I think, to the World Horse Welfare from an equine welfare organisation point of view is that we support the horse-human relationship in all of its forms across the world. And of course, that's everything from an elite sport animal to animals that are used for production and indeed for slaughter. And central to our approach in all of that is working in partnership. And I have to say, one of the wonderful partnerships we do have is with the RDA and the extraordinary work that the organisation does. So just a little bit more detail in terms of what World Horse Welfare does. There's 4 aspects to the activities we undertake. We provide direct care for equines, both in the UK and internationally, and that allows us to support our research to uncover the root causes of equine welfare problems globally and to seek their solutions for them. And this evidence then builds our knowledge to inform our education, which we provide to horse owners across the world in many different formats to many, many different audiences. And all of that hopefully brings credibility to our influence, enabling us to help shape attitudes, policies and practices to sustainably improve the welfare of the millions of equines, 130 million equines around the world. And possibly of a little bit more relevance to today is that we are the only equine welfare charity globally that I'm aware of to actively support the responsible involvement of horses in sport, and our welfare advisors to the FEI and have been for over 40 years, to British Racing for over 20 years, and several other federations and organisations across the globe. We co-wrote the FEI Code of Conduct for the Welfare of the Horse, and we're closely involved in the FEI's Equine Ethics and Wellbeing Commission, which we'll come back to later. So, turning to the sort of topic of today's discussion, what is social license? Well, at its heart, it's an unwritten contract between society and those who want to carry out an activity. It's got nothing to do with the law. It can't be self-awarded, and in essence, it's practice meaning public acceptance. And indeed, we now often refer to public acceptance rather than social license. The concept is certainly not new. It dates back over 200 years and actually came to prominence very much in the 1990s with the mining industry, but now is applied across a variety of industries and sectors, including animal use activities and equestrian sport. And basically, it means the ongoing acceptance or approval of society, the general public, in other words. And the state of an industry's social license can help define very much its future. Having a social license allows an activity the privilege of operating largely with minimal formalized restrictions, as opposed to a formal restriction or indeed, as we touch on in a second, an outright ban on that activity. So how much support does equestrian have from the general public? This data looks at equestrian sports because at the moment we don't have any data around the equine assisted services sector in this regard. And last May, we've just repeated this exercise, but last May, World Horse Welfare commissioned YouGov to conduct a survey of a representative sample of over 4,000 members of the British public. Now, this highlighted that 22% of those people surveyed do not support the continued involvement of horses in sport under any circumstances, and 42% would only support this if welfare is improved. So that's 2/3 of those who were surveyed who are not happy with the status quo. And as a side, whilst the data is not showed here, very interestingly, people from within the equestrian sector had similar views. And these results that I'm showing here are very similar to the results that we have carried out annually since 2002. So the dial hasn't shifted much over that time, which would indicate this isn't just a snapshot in time, but something that's a bit more deeper rooted. So how is a social license lost? Well, this is typically pretty insidious, and it may go unnoticed until the situation is difficult to retrieve. It moves through a series of phases, as shown here, from negative portrayal in the media to restrictive legislation or an outright ban. And there are certainly already clear examples from in equestrian showing the impact of losing social license, such as the loss of equestrian from the Olympics, the introduction of HISA, the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority in the US, and indeed a jump racing ban in many parts of Australia. So we need to recognise that this isn't always irretrievable situation. Many industries who have been challenged through their social license have bounced back better than ever, and when they responded in the right way to this public acceptance challenge. So we need to recognise that the public acceptance for any activity can be lost, as I've just mentioned. And more broadly, greyhound racing has been banned in many parts of Australia, or some parts of Australia and the US, and is under growing threat, as we know, in the UK with the recent bans in Wales and Scotland. As I've mentioned, jumps racing has been banned from most of Australia, and equestrianism has been lost from modern pentathlon in the Olympics. And animal welfare concerns, what binds together all of these situations, the animal welfare concerns underpin the loss of all of these sports, at least to partly an extent. So we need to recognise that this is not about what we think, how good a job we think we're doing. It's about what the public thinks. And there's a lot we can do in terms of the opportunity to influence what they think. So the key issue to take away here is that everyone involved in equestrianism, organisations and individuals, have a part to play in influencing public perception, and of course never more so than in the digital world that we increasingly live in. So I'm very aware that so far I've talked about sport, and sport isn't the same as equine assisted services. But that's, as I mentioned earlier, is where we have the data, and obviously where activities are potentially at much higher risk of losing public acceptance. Racing was, as we know, was the first equestrian sport to appear in the spotlight and the public consciousness. Then questions started to be asked about other sports, and serious questions, as we know, around equine welfare in racing and other sports continue to be asked. Now, I recognise much of the RDA world is often very different from equestrian sport. The question is whether or when RDA activity might enter the spotlight of the public gaze. And what we have learned from other disciplines is it's so much better if you are ready for the challenge. It's also really important to remember the power of working together and the detrimental effects of what we call whataboutery and finger pointing at other disciplines. Apart from anything else, the public does not really differentiate among other use of horses, whether it's polo or racing or dressage or whatever. It means, to a large extent, we are all in this together because it's people with horses in the public eye. So every equestrian sport and activity and every equestrian organisation, including the equine assisted services sector, and every individual has a part to play in maintaining public acceptance for equestrianism. But you might ask, how is public acceptance earned? Well, this slide shows the results of a major public opinion survey carried out in 2024 with a significant amount of funding coming from the Racing Foundation. The project involved most equestrian sports in the UK, and whilst this still relates to sport, I do think the data is really very relevant to the RDA and the equine assisted services sector. Now, sophisticated analysis of this data allowed an exploration of the relationship between all measures in the survey and how they influence public acceptance. And this analysis found that, as in every other sector which we looked at, trust is a major driver of public acceptance. So, what drives trust? The key drivers of trust are listed here, with the most important at the top. Now, we don't have time to go through these in any detail, but it is worth noting the top driver, the social importance of equestrianism. And this means that the more the public thinks that horse sports are important to the fabric of society, the more they will trust and accept them. You might be surprised that the analysis did not pull out equine welfare as a specific driver of trust or acceptance. But on closer view, I'm sure you'll recognise that welfare is threaded through the model in multiple places. So, what is the relevance to the RDA? Well, I think in relation to the social importance of equestrianism, the RDA's 2025 impact report certainly makes for heartwarming reading. It is full of positivity regarding the difference the RDA makes to your participants, all supported by data. It shows how well the RDA is providing something that is of social importance to the public. Thinking about the drivers of trust identified previously, this is clearly really good news for the sector. But what of the horses and ponies involved and their welfare? Other studies published to date show how strong a focus there is on the importance placed on equine welfare by EAS professionals. But is there anything that you can do to evidence that, or perhaps indeed to improve it? And a useful way to think about this is to focus on the top priorities for equestrianism as provided by the FEI's Equine Ethics and Wellbeing Commission I mentioned earlier. And this was generated from a 2022 survey of 28,000 respondents from equestrianism in 116 countries. And these 6 priority areas are shown here in descending order of priority from right to left. And even though the survey questions related to sport, they are almost certainly relevant for the entire sector, including the RDA. So now what we're going to do is briefly focus on each one with some suggestions for how you could use these to further demonstrate your equine welfare credentials. The top topic of concern among equestrianisms in mainstream sport was training and riding tack and equipment. The type of tack used in sport is unlikely, not totally impossible, to be an issue in the RDA, but training and riding are fundamental to what you do. You have excellent rules on rider weight, and I know that you think hard about the effect of the rider on the horse. But to what extent do RDA staff and volunteers understand how horses learn? Every time we interact with a horse, we are essentially training them, whether we think we are or not, because they learn from the consequence of their behavior. This is what is known as operant conditioning and forms the basis for all pressure and release or negative reinforcement and positive reinforcement training. And understanding how to do this well is fundamental to making our interactions with horses ethically acceptable. So it's vital that we understand and apply these principles. And here are just some useful papers that we have come across about the use of learning theory in horses. And it's also worth taking a look at the International Society for Equitation Science 10 training principles. World Horse Welfare has a range of resources on our website on this whole topic, including our recent published whip use guide, which is very much based on the use of equine learning theory. The second priority is recognizing physical and emotional stress, which is as relevant for the RDA activity as for any mainstream sport. We need to ensure that we know how to recognize signs of physical and emotional stress in our horses, which can be subtle. But how do we do that? We can learn from all sorts of professionals out there, ethologists, qualified behaviorists, and vets. Again, please do have a look at the World Horse Welfare webinars and advice pages, including our horse behavior checklist. Learn about the equine pain face and the ridden horse pain ethogram developed by Dr. Suze Eidson for behaviors that may indicate musculoskeletal pain. And the Pet Professional Guilds in Australia and the Fear Free websites also have really useful resources. And thinking more holistically about horses' quality of life, I just wanted to briefly mention the 5 domains model for animal welfare assessment. The World Horse Welfare website has a simple introduction to this framework, and we have also developed a horse's experiences on yards or hay tool to help you use 5 domains in a yard or herd setting. This approach repeatedly brings us back to ask the question, what matters to the horse, which is obviously critical when thinking about their welfare. The third area was accountability, enforcement, and knowledge. And I'm very aware that the RDA has a very strong governance structure, so I won't dwell on this one further. But the fourth area was the other 23 hours, which you might have heard talked about previously, which is a time when horses and ponies are not being trained or otherwise used or involved with people. From a welfare perspective, in many ways, this should be the highest priority, as it accounts for over 90% of a horse's life and equates to maximising in practice exposure to the 3 Fs of friends, freedom and forage. This means practically having access to turnout with other horses and ponies with a range of grazing and browsing options, freedom to move at will, to choose as many aspects of their life as possible, and an ability to not only see other horses and ponies, but to touch them too. All of this reflects a horse's fundamental physiological, psychological, and behavioural needs. And we often add a fourth F too, for fun, as good welfare is not just about preventing negative experiences, it's just about as much about promoting and seeking out positive experiences. And I suspect that many RDA horses and ponies generally have far more exposure to the 3 Fs than those in mainstream sport. But this needs to be a priority for all horses year round to the maximum extent possible. Few of us will achieve perfection, but there are usually changes we can all make that will help shift the dial for horses. And small changes really do add up over time. Again, there are a lot of resources on the horse welfare website that cover this topic. Plus, it's covered very well by numerous other educational providers. The fifth priority is competitive drive, horses as a number. Competitive drive is probably less relevant for much of the RDA activity, but horses as a number concept certainly is. Horses are individuals, and a one-size-fits-all approach is unlikely to provide each horse with a good life. So it's really good to consider to what extent you attempt to ascertain how well each individual RDA pony enjoys the activity on offer, how well they are matched with their rider, and whether a pony is suited to be involved in RDA activity overall. This comes back to being able to interpret each horse's behaviour, as mentioned earlier, and it's especially important to not to interpret shut down or passive coping behaviour as indication that the horse is happy with their situation. These horses may be just as stressed, if not more so, than horses showing obvious signs of stress. And there's a really useful article on this by Renata Larsen, the equine ethologist, that is worth a read on this whole topic. And the final priority area is the not fit to compete and masking health problems. I'm sure all horses are comfortable in their work in the RDA. I'm sure ensuring all horses are comfortable in their work in the RDA is a priority. And for sure, the use of painkillers is not an issue in itself if prescribed by a vet, keeps the horse pain-free, and there are no long-term adverse effects on the horse. But don't forget the necessity for the horse to be mentally comfortable in their work too. A common physical issue that is often difficult to recognise is lameness, especially hind limb or multi-limb lameness, which is where the equine pain face and the ridden horse pain ethogram mentioned earlier can be so helpful. It is easy to misinterpret behaviours or miss more subtle ones, so it's really helpful to get vets and other paraprofessionals involved early. And if an equine is no longer fit for work within the RDA or wherever, what happens? It's important to have a formal predetermined retirement criteria and a rehoming and euthanasia plan. Again, there are many useful resources online, including the My Senior Horse website and the World Horse Welfare website, which includes a focus on end-of-year planning and the charity's vision for the responsible involvement of horses in sport. So to bring that all together, it is vital to recognise that we are fortunate that we can currently pursue our chosen equestrian activities with minimal formal restrictions. But public acceptance of involving horses in any activity is not a given, and all parts of the sector need to be proactive to ensure a sustainable future. To do this, we need to ensure that we treat horses as the most important stakeholder in all equestrian activities, a mantra that we so often hear from across the sector. But how well is this lived up to? The public's trust in us to put horse welfare first and their belief in the legitimacy of what we do are key to retaining public acceptance. For the RDA, this is a natural step from your overarching ethos of caring for the well-being or individual human participants in your care. And one that many of you, I'm sure, have already made. But I hope today's presentation has given some food for thought on how you can continue to truly put welfare at the centre of all of your decision making. Thank you very much, and I'm really happy to take any questions.
Roly, that's brilliant, absolutely fascinating. Thank you. We are happy to take questions. I think perhaps the easiest way of doing it, oh, there's lots of claps going on, is to use the hand raise button on the top bar. So if anybody has any questions, if you press the little hand raise button, I can come to you. Tiggy, we've got you. If you want to unmute yourself.
Am I unmute? Hopefully I am.
You've been unmuted.
I was just really quite concerned about the pie chart that showed what the public thought about equine sport. I wondered if you could just talk a little bit more about that, how it was assessed, because I just missed when that was, and whether you said it was within the equine industry or whether it was not.
No, it's a very good question. I mean, that is carried out through YouGov. So that was a representative sample of 4,000 people from across the country. So that means that only 2% of those will have had regular interaction with horses, which is actually, you know, when you look at the number of horse riders across the country, is in proportion to the population of 68 million. So obviously a more urban focused setting. So in other words, a representative sample. And I think it does sound, I mean, it was 1 in 5, around 20% that don't support the use of horses in sport under any circumstances. And that we've carried it out annually since 2022. And that's crept up now to 24%. But obviously, there's a bit of a health warning that goes in any of these surveys, and exactly what people mean when they answer the question. But I'm not sure it's anything to be too concerned about in isolation, because there have always been a spread of opinions. And obviously, you've got some who, have very sort of clear opinions on what is acceptable, and to an extent you're not going to really change their minds. What we generally, and obviously at the other end of the chart, you've sort of got however many percentage, 10%, who really think horse sports is brilliant. You've then got that middle sector, and I often call them the agnostic and the ambivalent. They have no interaction. They're not sure they really care about horse sport, but if all they hear about is bad things in the media, whether that be printed or social media, then potentially more of that middle is going to go into. So I think that does show that there is a wide range of opinions there, and I think, as I mentioned in the survey, actually there's many people from in equestrianism. So if you just take the 2% of people who have regularly interact with horses, you get a very similar spread of opinions. There are some who don't think horses should be involved in sport even there. So it's not just the general public out there thinking one thing and the equestrian world thinking another. Clearly there's context to both. So I think it's more a rally cry, Tiggy, I'd say, than say you shouldn't ignore this. And you do ignore it, then similar things to what's happened in those other examples, especially modern pentathlon, especially jump racing in Australia, and certainly greyhound racing closer to home. Those are the kind. That's what happens when you lose that public acceptance.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. I also just thought it was.
Hang on. Got other people now. You need to put your hand up again. We've got them queuing up, Tiggy.
I was only, fine.
Francis, off you go.
First of all, thank you, Roly. That was really interesting. And I have heard you speak on several occasions, but it's always nice to hear you speaking again. So thank you. I think you've more or less actually answered my query. I do think that pie chart shows a huge lack of understanding from the general public about what is involved with horses in every aspect of what they do. And I think they're probably hearing what's put out in the press about, dressage riders and racing and all of that, and they lump us all together. I've had a few comments for our group does riding and unmounted sessions. Why do we need to ride our horses? Why can't we just do the unmounted sessions? But again, that is a lack of understanding. And when you do actually sit down and explain to that person the physical aspect of riding a horse and also helping with mental health issues, that understanding becomes apparent, and I think we need to get that message out. I live in the middle of Lambourne and I see horses who are certainly fall into the category of only going out for maybe even half an hour, sometimes an hour. They're in their stables 24/7, most of them, bored out of their trees, and they then have those behavioural issues which the general public see when they're trying to get past them on the road. So there is this huge misunderstanding, which I think you do a fantastic job at getting out, but I think it's something that we can also help with in RDA, getting the message out to people.
I absolutely agree, Francis. I would just be very careful, because you often hear people talk that we just need to educate the public.
Yeah.
Actually, the public, and I think that we certainly need to educate ourselves within the sector, because, as you said, there's a lot around access to the free Fs and some fairly fundamental aspects of equine welfare. So absolutely education there. But I think what the general public don't need education, because they're not the ones who don't ride, have no interest in riding. So they just need to have trust, and that's I think where the RDA have such an exciting sort of aspect, because that number one driver of trust was the social relevance of equines in society today. And I think it's just making sure that, and I'm sure the RDA does this very well, but I'm not sure it's always done really well. But you've just got to have someone within your organisation and within you individually, when you're making decisions about your own horse, it's truly looking through the horse's eyes. What is in the best interest of the horse? Not what's in the best interest of you as a rider or whatever. What is in the best interest of the horse? Now, that's, you don't always have to follow that slavishly, but you've really got to make sure that when you're not doing something in the best interest of the horse, you contain that, you minimize the issues involved in that, you certainly make it as for a short time as possible. And that all helps obviously build that trust and the importance. But no, I couldn't agree more that there's a lot of misunderstanding both within the sector and outside.
Thank you, Francis. Becky has got a question, but she can't unmute herself, which is a definite drawback. So and I can't do it either. I've been having a look, but Katie, do you know if I can unmute somebody?
You should be able to, but if it's not letting you, it could be to do with Becky's whatever Becky is on, like phone, laptop.
Becky, if you type your question into the chat, and then Jane, if we go to you, Jane Marsden.
She has put it in the chat, her question.
Oh, brilliant. Sorry, hang on, Jane. We'll do this one first then. Just one sec. So is there any research into the use of horses in leisure activities, or rather left field use of dogs, for example, as guide dogs, assisted dogs?
Oh, it's a very good question. I'm not. I don't think last time I looked, I didn't know anything with dogs, but inevitably it will certainly be being produced if it's not already. No, there isn't any significant research around horses in leisure, and that will evolve for sure. But obviously, that sport, when you certainly look at racing and the Olympic disciplines that are nice and discreet, when you think about leisure activities, obviously it gets far broader, and that's a more difficult thing to survey. But I have no doubt that will come.
Brilliant. And Jane Marsden, sorry to stop you there.
Great, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yeah, but you could be being a little bit louder. You're very quiet.
Okay, I'll shout. I don't know why. I'm one of those, I think it was 42%, who feels that actually I've got some issues with horse sport generally and what we do with horses generally, and that's getting worse as time goes on. And that was just a comment, really. My question is, are World Horse Welfare aware of any specific threats to anything? So you've said about the greyhound racing's gone, jump racing in Australia. Are you aware of any specific threats on the sort of horizon at the moment?
What more than that is there already?
Yeah. Is dressage particularly at risk because of some of the bad press it's had? Is it show jumping? Are you aware of anything specific that we should be aware of in the industry?
Well, I think probably it's very intermittent, but we know that jumps racing is probably the one that does have a huge challenge, because the numbers of significant injuries and fatalities each year. Now, a lot of work's been done to bring that down, but that we know from research that is a key concern, and that driver of trust. So I think you would certainly say that there's a real challenge for certainly jumps racing, and obviously racing more generally has the highest profile and therefore the highest risk that goes with that. Clearly, I think the Olympic disciplines then have the next highest profile, and obviously, and it is surprising to me that show jumping isn't more of a focus, because that's by far the biggest discipline. And there are many issues that have come to light in dressage that you would probably see similar issues in jumping. So I think the lack of focus there is certainly not anything to rely on. And the final comment, I think certainly something that's increasingly taking a focus is the showing world, and we're hearing more around real concerns around in the showing, not just and obviously rider weight is one of those, and that obviously it goes right across the sector. But other sort of the dark arts that some people refer to, it's again, there hasn't been a lot in the public view, but that does seem to be increasing. So that's where I'd probably say the risks are. But I think to an extent, there was that article in the Telegraph 2 summers ago, should we be riding horses at all? And when a paper like that is writing an article like that, to be honest, it was a very badly written article, but you realise, God, there is a movement here. So there is a sort of a direction of travel that we cannot ignore. And for us, it's all around, if we're doing right by our horses, then that's a story, that's a foundation block on which public trust can be built.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Katie, you've got your hand up. Katie Lake.
So my question was, do you guys at World Horse Welfare see like the kind of anthropomorphism that is seen in other areas? Because I've just finished a module on my degree, which is a big like behaviour and welfare module basically, and a huge part of that they were talking about the like humans attributing traits onto animals that are human traits, not animal traits. And I was just wondering how much of that you guys see at World Horse Welfare, because I know you have, there's all the things like the grimace scales and things like that for like facial expressions, and like humans have like twice the number of muscles at least in their face that a horse does, and it's the same for things like rabbits. They've got so many more muscles. So I was just wondering if you see that, because we also see like when people are like, oh well, I don't need a coat, so my horse doesn't need a rug, that kind of thing. So I suppose my question is, do you see that, and also what is your kind of advice to people who are kind of crossing those lines, because it's easy to do if you don't know.
Very much so.
Yeah,
no, it's a really good question, Katie. The straight answer is absolutely yes. We see it all the time. It's not always bad. It's not always a negative, because especially when you think about welfare, and think about mental well-being of our horses being as important as their physical welfare, actually the FEI refers to the happy horse. Now that gets the academics going, so what do you mean by a happy horse? And that is a completely anthropomorphic term. But the advantage, rather than talking a horse with a positive affective state, which is, the academic term, are people going to relate to that kind of language? So I think sometimes language to engage people, you can sort of transgress across that anthropomorphic line a bit. But I think the key for us is making sure you are truly looking at this through the horse's eyes. Look, what does a horse need, and therefore what are their wants and desires? And I think you raised it, in fact, the other way round that I would have raised it, because often it gets cold. People think, oh, I'll go and put a rug on the horse. Now, they've survived for millennia without rugs. And in fact, I do remember coming to an RDA conference and saying, the one thing I would the best way of improving welfare in this country is to get rid of rugs. And there's still part of me that believes that. We have an epidemic of equine obesity in this country because people are it sounds very harsh, but they're killing their horses with kindness. They are imposing their beliefs and their values of what a horse needs on them. And it's having pretty devastating consequences with laminitis and EMS and all sorts of other things. So I think there is a real need for us all to really wind back and say, I've got to identify what my horse needs and what makes my horse happy, and do all I can to provide that. And the final thing I would say, this is not perfection, and not everyone can have lots of pasture, and so especially in the winter that we've just gone. Whilst we need rain now, we didn't need rain during the winter, did we? It can be really difficult to give our horses freedom. But there's lots of ways of doing that in a really practical way. You can make those small little changes, which over the 365 days really can help. And actually, when it's bitterly cold outside, our horses still generally love it. So not being anthropomorphic and really looking and convincing ourselves that this is in the right interest of the horse is the most important sort of guide that we should constantly fall back on.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for your question, Casey. Janine Elton, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Roly, this is really fascinating. What's my question here? I'm wondering what advice you can give to RDA, really at grassroots level, like the individual groups, to help them create this social influence, the importance thing. It strikes me that sometimes our language isn't right. We talk about we're using the horses, but we need to talk about we're partnering with the horses. Which horses are we working with? And it strikes me that the local amazing stories that we've got could be shared. And I'm just wondering, rather than this comes from the top down, I wonder what you think we could do more of at a local level, at a real, like I work doing Friday groundwork stuff. So this is equine assisted learning. We don't really shout out about the beautiful and amazing things that the horses add to people's lives. Sorry, what do you think we could do more of?
No, without a doubt, and that social value, and that's obviously something that the British Equestrian did some survey about last year, and they're going to repeat this year. The social value of equestrianism and what that brings to people's lives is extraordinary, and I think it showed that the social value of a riding school is nearly 300,000 a year. And that's they've monetized through a treasury sort of basis what that means. So absolutely, it's really important. The only caution, and it's not caution, it's just making sure that when you're telling those stories of the impact that you are having on your human participants, that you're aligning the impact and the benefits to your equine participants, and it's running because obviously all the good in the world, if we're doing take this as a fictitious example, but if we're doing a brilliant job of improving the lives of countless children and adults across the country through the RDA activity, but it's having a significant detrimental effect on the horses, then that's clearly not an acceptable situation. So it's just trying to marry. It's not an excuse for poor welfare, which sometimes it's sort of, and racing's a great example. When a horse, tragically has a bad injury on the racecourse, one of their responses, less so recently, to be absolutely fair, but they'll say, oh, they live like kings and queens. They're the best looked after horses in the world. Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, you should be looking after them brilliantly anyway, and that's not an excuse to be able to go and do what you like with them. So it's just the language, as you say, is really important, and we are much better now, I think, but a long way to go. You shouldn't be talking about horses breaking horses in. You shouldn't be talking about giving horse a kick. You should, all of these things that are common parlance not that long ago, and actually how that comes across to people can be really, really negative. But if we're genuinely looking at it through the horse's eyes, then we won't be using that language at all. So that's all I would suggest with that real value. And the last thing I would say is, in the midst of a public outcry about whatever it be, and we've seen there's lots of public outcries about equines over the last few years. There's no point doing anything then in wartime. It's in peacetime that you can build that sort of that value, that trust, and in a more coordinated way. And I think there is a huge opportunity, and the RDA is obviously rich with stories to be able to do that.
Thanks, Janine. Thank you. I don't see any other hands up. Are there any other questions from anybody else?
Well, I would do, but I can't put my thingy up. Yes.
Right, Irene, Nigel, go for it.
Yeah. Can you hear me? I haven't done anything with
loud and clear.
Oh, okay. So one of the slides you showed earlier was about a survey you'd done on use of the whip. Now, a whip is seen as a piece of a cruel action. If you're carrying a whip, it's seen as being a negative. Now, as a horse rider, I was always told to use it as an additional aid to your leg. So what was the research, or where was the research done on, and what was the outcome? What words should we be using, if at all?
Well, it's interesting because one of the things we didn't look at was what we should be calling it. And in the show jumping world, you'll be aware they call it the padded baton, which is what they use. I mean, to be honest, my personal view is baton is a symbol of police brutality, or how that might well be sort of seen out in the wider world. So I'm not sure it's an improvement. But that's just my personal view. But I can completely understand why they wanted to try and move away from the whip. But British racing has whip rules. The FEI has whip rules. So it's we've got to go a long way to go if we're going to change the wording of it. What I referred to earlier was actually guidance around the use of the whip and predominantly for the leisure rider. And we looked at all the research, and I can on our website, if you go onto the World Horse Welfare, it's freely available, and you can see all of the references that we looked at in terms of what the research base tells us about. And there's obviously very based around equine learning theory and how horses learn. And you're absolutely right. A whip is an extension of your arm, and it, in terms of how you use it, and how you don't use, is very much articulated in that what is hopefully a comprehensible, easy to use guide for the use of the whip. Now, there's some areas which we didn't go down. The use of the whip in safety is quite controversial, especially when you're thinking about cross country in eventing, especially at the top end. So there were some areas that we didn't go down, but when I tell you that it took us about 5 years to produce this guidance, because the use of the whip, as you've already heard, is a very sensitive issue, and there's everything from carrying a whip and not using it at all the way through to obviously using it with force. And the final thing I would say around this is that we just need to be mindful of the mental impact of the whip as well as the physical impact. And certainly, obviously, in racing, they use it in a very different way. But if a horse thinks it's going to get hit with a whip and doesn't, then that's not probably much better than actually hitting it with a whip, because obviously it's going to react, its mind's going to think, and it will take learn from that along those guides. So by all means, and I'd love to have any feedback around that guidance. It took us a long time. We want to evolve that guidance, but it's a really good example of centering how we use the whip in a way that a horse understands, because we recognize that certainly from a leisure perspective, most of the time the whip was used, the horse doesn't have a clue why it's being used and why it's being involved in that way. So hopefully that be of help to RDA and other centres.
Yeah, thank you.
Tiggy had a comment as well. Tiggy, do you want to say? I know you put it in the chat, but did you want to make your point?
Yeah. Actually, yeah, it was interesting listening to the whip thing as well, because in Pony Club now they've made it much clearer about, you know, when you use the whip, what it's for, how quickly you have to use it to try and get the reaction from the horse. And you use it, it's got to be straight away, and you can only use the stick twice, you know. So I thought it's really interesting listening to what you're saying about the whip. Also, Diane, in the RDA rules, I don't know if you've seen, but it says for the show, the whip must be a non-marking whip. Well, there is no such thing unless you use the baton, which you don't use in dressage. So it doesn't really make sense. So it is something that is obviously a very grey area. But my main point I was just going to say was it's nice to hear that the word social license, maybe we're moving away from that a little bit, because it's very hard, I've found, to teach children what social licensing actually means, you know, and it took me, I don't know how long to make them understand it wasn't a bit of paper like a driving license you get, you know. So if there was an easier word, public opinion is so much more straightforward, you know. It just makes it easier to teach them, then they understand it, because we are all about, you know, obviously welfare now in the Pony Club as well. So yeah, that was my comment.
No, thank you. And yeah, public acceptance, as I say, is what we use the whole time. The only caution here is that we're not making changes to how we care and train for our horses to make ourselves look good with the public. We are making these changes because that's what's right. That's what's ethically right for our horses. And then you've got that as a foundation stone to be able to tell that story to the general public. You sometimes hear, and you can hear it, read it in Horse and Hound quite not infrequently, the fact that it's really important. The public think this, so we've got to do that. No, you've got to do what is right for your horse and then tell that story to the public. And it's just really important to get that sequencing right.
I think it's brilliant for the horse, the way that the social license has become a big thing. Yes, at the moment, people do still think it's about what is seen, but actually the whole thing is about treating the horse better. And unfortunately, within sport, all sport, you know, that has always been an issue behind the scenes, you know, and if it makes a change, then that's only a good thing.
Definitely.
Brilliant. Thank you. Listen, I'm going to wrap it up because we've got 3 minutes to go, and I think we've had a good debate. I think it's been brilliant actually doing it on this format rather than at the conference, because it's probably allowed us to have a few more questions thrown in, a little bit more discussion. But Roly, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Really stimulating topic and stimulating conversation that it sparked as well.
My pleasure. Well, thank you for the invitation. I've really enjoyed it.
Good, and obviously this will be recorded, and we'll get that out to you, Katie. I'm going to send you the link, and we can get it out on the socials, and we can get it out to the group contacts. Is the content of the presentation the same as what you emailed me to start with, or have you changed it at all?
No, I haven't changed it at all.
Okay, so I've also got the content of the presentation that I can get out to people as well. So if you want those links and those those bits of additional reading, we should have access to that. But I think for now we can go and have a cold shower and wrap up. Oh, really warm.
you.
I'm in a sweat box.
Yes.
But thank you. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Roly. Yeah.
All right.
See you soon.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really helpful.
That was very interesting. It was. I mean, you always. Oh, I don't know how you get rid of all this.